All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today's lesson is going to be the intro part of the uh, medieval times. This is known as the Dark Ages. And we're going to talk about today is how life was for the peasants and where they stayed and things like that. Okay. Eventually, we're going to get into the knighthoods and then things like the Inquisition, the Crusades, Genghis Khan, and things like that. All right, so really good stuff, but let's start off with the peasants. All right, so we're going to analyze how the three field system worked. We're going to examine the setup of manors along England, and then we'll create an argument which is better, bartering or money. And if you don't know what bartering means, we'll get to that in a little bit. So here's your warm up picture. Now, the thing I'm asking you here is to point out three jobs that you see people are doing. So basically, three things you see people doing here in this picture. Now, do not do what one person did in my class saying they're farming. Well, all of them are farming. I'm asking for specifics. What specific job is this person doing, or that person, or that person? The other thing I have to say before you guys get started is this: if you don't know the technical term for the thing the person is doing, you can explain it. So if you don't know the technical name for the guy with the horse right there at the very, very front and a little bit down below, um, if you don't know the technical name for that, you can just say, "Oh, he's with the horse and doing this to the ground." Explain what's happening, or I see this guy or girl or whatever doing this with the with the tree, So there is a technical name, but if you don't know, just explain it. Okay? It's not that hard. Don't beat yourself up like some students did in class. Okay? Just explain it if you don't know what that job is. Okay? If you don't know the technical name. All right? So pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. So when the Dark Ages started, a lot of the noble people, kings and some of that, they tried to make sure that the peasants, people below them, stayed down there. And one of the things they made them do was a lot of work in the fields, you know, agricultural work. And because of that, new tools popped up. Okay. So tools like the scythe. So if you look at the top picture of all those tools, it's the one farthest to the left and up. Um, That's a scythe. If you've seen the pictures of Grim Reaper, that thing he's holding, that's a scythe. Axes, you guys should know what an axe is. And a sickle is the one right in the dead center in the middle, the one that looks like a half moon. Um, that's a sickle. Okay. And those things are very, very sharp if you've ever seen one, you know. So what happened was this: back when the Romans were around, the Egyptians, some of that, they would plant on one field, huge field, right? And basically, when things like locusts would come around and start eating the the food, that was it. That was all their food. It was gone. You know. So what they decided to do now in the medieval times was have a three field system. So one field, the food would already be planted, it's growing, and it's ready to be picked. Another field, the plants, you'll be barely be planted. They'll be plowing the field, putting the plant, the seeds in and things like that, getting that prepared. And the third field, the animals would be eating the grass, eating the weeds, things like that. And they'd be fertilizing the ground. Now, if you don't know what that term means, fertilizing, basically they'd be pooping on the ground. If you're not into farming, you don't know much about it, that might sound disgusting to you. Like, oh, animals poop on the ground and they planted stuff down there. Yeah, because believe it or not, animal poop, especially like chickens and cows and goats and so that, their poop actually neutralizes uh, gives nutrients to the ground, and that's what makes plants grow bigger, faster, and stronger. Okay, and then you got the lower levels, the people. They're called the peasants. That term is still used to this day by people. When they try to look down on someone, they'll call them peasants. Okay, peasants were workers, and there's going to be another term in the next slide. And a lot of these guys, they had little to no rights compared to the nobles and the kings and things like that. Uh, but the thing is, as you'll find on the next slide, they were free, but they basically had no rights. All right, so the manor system. This was basically, manor is a castle. Okay. Now, the thing is, when we typically think of castles now, we think of huge buildings made of brick and things like that. But not every castle was big and luxurious and things like that. Some of them were pretty small. Majority of them really were small. Um, but the thing is, they were, in a sense, castles. Okay. Now, all of them had the same thing. One of them, they had a castle, obviously, right? Second thing was a church. Now, the church could be within the walls of the manor or on the outside, but the thing is, it was nearby, wherever the peasants were at. Okay. The other thing was forest land. Okay, forest land was a big thing that manors needed. Either the forests were right there next to them, or it was nearby. Um, Now, some places did were lucky enough to have a river or a stream near them, or right beside them. Some didn't, so some of them had to get their water through wells and things like that. Okay. Now, I told you guys peasants other had another name too, called serfs. And basically these were the people who served under a nobleman or the king or a lord, type of thing. And in Europe at this time, 60 to 80% of the population were serfs. So a lot of people were underneath, a lord or a king. And they had to work the land and things like that. Now, life for the men, basically, they work the land. And I'll be giving more examples of that in the next slide. Um, but the thing is, they weren't slaves, as one student told me some years ago. They go, oh, so they were slaves. I was like, no, technically they weren't slaves, but they were free. They were free. And again, the rights were very limited. Yeah. Uh, but the thing is, they were not in bondage, not slaves. Okay. Women basically cleaned, cooked, took care of the children, had kids, things like that. Made clothing. Um, that's what they did. You know, and this would be the type of thing that some guys, that whole notion of a woman should be doing this, or a woman should be doing that, it sprang from this time. Because that's what women in Europe were doing. For the past 1500 years. So it was seen as, oh, that's what a woman's supposed to do. And the thing is, that old mentality still sticks to this day, you know. But that's where it came from, was from the Dark Ages. Okay. Now, early medieval times, manors were everywhere. You see castles all over Europe. There were anywhere from 25 to 65,000 of them. Now, a student some time ago asked me, well, how come there's not that many right now? Because, like I said, some of them were big, some of them were, a lot of them were small, and a lot of those small ones, when another area conquered another area, they would destroy the manors. Now, how do we know it's a certain amount? Because you can tell from the structure of the land and stuff like that, and from, like bricks and things like that being laid down. It's like, okay, there used to be a castle here. You know, there used to be there was a foundation here years ago, and that's probably where the castle or manor was. Now, like I told you guys, the men basically had a year-round job. December to January, you guys were inside doing inside door work, fixing the house and things like that, building this or that, cleaning ditches, so where the water was coming through in the springtime, they made sure that those areas were clean. February and March, they started plowing the fields, and if the ground was too hard from the snow and ice, they would plow another field and try to find the ground that was thawed out, and that's would be the first field where they planted and things like that. April through July, basically planting, plowing, food, picking food. Um, this is where the cycle really started to kick in. August, September, hey, this is where the grains would really come in handy, and uh, they'd make their bread and stuff like that. Now, October is where they really started to slow down and realize, okay, winter's coming, so let's finish up this last bit with the land. They'd start breeding animals, really start to breed them. Um, in November, start, okay, now that the girl animal is pregnant, like the pigs and goats and some of that, then they would slaughter the guys animals, you know, and then basically prepare for winter. Start chopping down wood and getting things that they're gonna need. Um, take their dry goods, make sure that they're nice and secured and stuff like that. Okay. Now, here's the thing. This is a concept that some students have trouble wrapping their minds around. Back in the day, some people didn't have money. So what they would do is this thing called barter. So I'll trade you this for that. I'll trade you this basket of potatoes for your basket of carrots. And they would make the exchange. If that's what each side wanted, then that's what they would do. Now, was it even like that? Not always. Sometimes somebody would look at a basket of potatoes and say, well, I'll give you, you know, this basket of carrots because that's what you really want. I'll take the potatoes and maybe, let's say, a handful of radishes. And that would be the other person say yes or no. And they would negotiate and come up with an arrangement, because you can't say, oh, this is worth the same as this. That's not how it worked. It was basically what you valued more or less. Okay. Um, so people would exchange things, and that's where barter means change things without money. Okay. Um, Now by 1100, the barter system really started to decline because people realized, I can get money, right? Gold coins, silver coins, and use that to buy things. Because if I have a basket of, uh, say, carrots, what if I get tired of carrots? Then what am I going to do with them? Trade them for somebody else, for something else? What if they don't want it? And then the carrots get old, and then what? I'm stuck with them, and I just lost out. But with gold and coins and money like that, you can buy what you need and not the word, oh, I have to trade this soon. Okay. Now, here's a little interesting fact. Paper money was first used by the Mongols. Now, was there paper money before the Mongols, before 1100? Yeah, there was, but it was seen more as like an IOU. You know, it was seen more like a note, a banknote, than anything else. It wasn't a legitimate, worth value type of thing. Okay. Now, cities in the Dark Ages really started to grow, and they found the importance of walls, especially ones with towers. You know, because thing is, these walls now protected not only from the elements, it also protected from invaders and attacks. So they would have towers to keep an eye on who's around and things like that. Also, old cities started to pop up and really started to grow again. So places like um, Rome, people started moving back there, and the population started to grow again. Same thing with Constantinople, and Alexandria. That these cities started popping up, and before they were seen as, oh, that's where the old Greeks or the old Romans used to live. You know, and nobody really lived there. Now they started to revitalize again and become relevant. So here's my question to you. Which system seems better to you? The barter system or money? Okay, so think about if you were going to a store and you wanted something, what would be better to use? Like trade something you have for that item, or you think just straight using money? Okay, and why do you think that would be better? Okay, so think about it, write your response. Okay, um, use the writing prompt to help you out. Okay, but once you finish this question, you're done with this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Okay, so with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.